app and now, the hard part. Over the weekend, U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Nikki Haley displayed deft diplomatic skills, winning the consent of China and Russia to punish North Korea. The Security Council unanimously voted for new sanctions that could cripple Pyongyang's ability to finance its arms race. By UN standards, the reaction to 2 July intercontinental ballistic missile tests was swift. And not a moment too soon, The Washington Post reported Tuesday, after seeing a confidential Defense Intelligence Agency report, that North Korea has successfully produced a miniaturized nuclear warhead that can fit inside its missiles, crossing a key threshold on the path to becoming a full-fledged nuclear power. The sanctions vote, while well-timed, was hard work. Russia has weirdly argued the July 4 North Korean test WASNT and ICBM, so no new sanctions were needed. Last week, Russian UN Ambassador Vasily Nebezhny told me that in Moscow's analysis, the other launch, on July 28, was also of an interrange ballistic missile. Meanwhile, China, always reluctant to punish bad global actors, was decidedly unenthusiastic about sanctioning Pyongyang. Yet, Haley managed to unite the Council around a painful package, sanctioning a third of North Korea's non-armaments exports, estimated at $3 billion in coal, iron, and fishing products. Once enacted, these restrictions would hurt. Haley was justified in taking a small victory lap. But she also wisely cautioned the Council we should not fool ourselves into thinking we have solved the problem. Not even close. Sanctions alone rarely move rogue regimes to change behavior, and they haven't slowed Pyongyang in the past. Yet, when coupled with a true military threat, disruption of illicit arms supplies, cutting off access to banks and other means, they can be an effective tool. If countries like China actually abide by them. China is by far Pyongyang's biggest, almost only trading partner. And even after voting for past Security Council restrictions on the North's coal exports, Beijing continued to clandestinely buy them. So how do you get Beijing to do what it says it'll do? The Trump administration already threatened to punish China over unfair trade practices. As Politico reports, those threats were suspended to get China to vote yes at the United Nations. They should now be renewed, and linked to assurances that China won't violate the sanctions. Keeping Beijing on board is tricky, though. Chinese leaders fear what would follow a North Korean collapse. Millions of starving refugees would cross the Yalu River into China. Even worse, in Beijing's view, if Korea unites, China would be surrounded by America-friendly countries, with no buffering communist regime in sight. But remember, Premier Xi Jinping isn't happy with Kim Jong-un either. Beijing had reportedly tried to groom the dictator's half-brother, Kim Jong-nam, to replace the reigning strongman. Oops. In February, Kane had Abel killed in Malaysia. In 2013, Kim assassinated Uncle Jang Song-thaek, who had long served as China's point man in Pyongyang. China has less control over Kim Jong-un than it had over his father or grandfather, and much less influence over Pyongyang than widely assumed in the West. The trick for Trump will be to convince Xi that Kim is more trouble than he's worth. But how do you do that while ramping up American military presence in the Pacific, which worries China even more than the Norks? In UN speeches Sunday, both the Chinese and Russian ambassadors insisted that joint naval exercises the United States conducts with its Pacific allies must stop, and that there's no military solution to North Korea's military threat. Trump is slowly making clear to China that America's presence in the region will grow, since it involves long-term defense treaties with allies and an obligation to guarantee free navigation. Fresh U.S. naval assets continue to arrive, and new missile defense systems are to be deployed in South Korea and Japan. There are plenty of areas in which to negotiate with China. Trade, intellectual property theft, and cyber snooping come to mind. But on North Korea, America must stick to clear non-negotiable red lines. A belligerent madman who already threatens Alaska and will soon have the means to wreak havoc on Manhattan cannot be contained, so he must be stopped. If the United Nations can't do it, America must. Insisting first that China must stick to new UN sanctions is a good start.